What does it take to become an under 10 regional or national level player? That's a question we're going to be unpacking today on the My Tennis Coaching Podcast. I hope you're well. This is probably the last ever pre-recorded podcast. The plan going forward after February half term here in the UK is to go live each and every Monday, 10 a.m. London time. I'll discuss topics like I am today, but also you will have the ability to either join me live on camera, which is a great new feature on YouTube, or you can just go into the chat and leave some questions or comments as well, and I can interact in real time. I just feel because I normally film these in my car, today I'm at home, I'm just talking to myself. So I think what a better opportunity to actually have some interaction and some real-time feedback. And hopefully YouTube is listening and the algorithm will push out the live stream a little bit more than the long form video, but we'll see what happens with that. But yes, so what does it take to become a under 10 national level player? That is something that the Lawn Tennis Association has released over the past couple of weeks here in the UK. The LTA have released a player pathway pack, which in that pack includes things like how many hours per week your child should have, a breakdown between squad and individual training, and I've got some thoughts on it. And before I get into it and share, again, just my opinion, I'm not knocking the LTA. I think the LTA have a very, very difficult job. To be a national governing body of such a big sport like tennis is tough. And they've got to balance so many different things: participation, performance, coach education, officiating, and the list goes on and on and on. Add into that mix now additional sports like paddle as well. It's quite tough. And the LTA can't really do any right. Every time they release something, people like me will always have an opinion on it. And this is just my opinion because I've worked in this space for 20 odd years now. I've worked on the player pathway. I've had positions as talent attraction and talent development manager from LTA performance centres. I currently work in an LTA under 10 performance centre, and I currently work with a number of players who are on this pathway. So I'm just sharing my opinion. It is not to bash the LTA and say, oh my God, this is completely wrong. However, I do have some strong issues on this. So I'm just going to, apologies, I'm going to look down, but I need to see the stats. I will put a link below. Now, to be fair, in the document they've produced, it does say it's very difficult to give you a exact figure of how many hours per week it takes to become a professional player. We've talked about this on the podcast before. Every single player is unique. Every single player is different. No two players' journeys are the same. And there's a nice disclaimer at the very top from this document saying that this is just a ballpark figure as a guidance. It is not 100% accurate, and you should read into it as little or as much as you want. It also states that this timetable should be viewed as in-school time. It also states that this timetable should be viewed over a course of a year. So it says that in school holidays, you can increase your on-court time as well. Let's start off with the total tennis hours. So we're just going to look at 9 and under today. So 9 and under, individual lesson, 2. So 2 hours a week, individuals, which to be fair, most players that I work with or most players on the pathway are generally doing 2 hours per week. I don't believe they need 2 hours per week individual work. I've mentioned this before on the podcast. Individual lessons are absolutely fake. The coach just gives the player a perfect ball. They work on their technique, and to me, it's a waste of time. Players will probably get more benefit from doing squad training where they're hitting and sparring with players their own age and stage. I think so much is invested in private lessons that I don't truly believe in them. Yes, I do private lessons. However, I always tell players, like, I'll do it. However, I am going to try and play like a 9-year-old to the best of my ability. Some people say I do play like a 9-year-old, but that's a different matter. But there's an emphasis on private lessons. So private lessons are right at the top. So for me, that's not a good start. Squad training, 4+ hours a week, which is a lot straight away. So already we're looking at 6 hours of tennis training per week. So 6 hours of training per week with a coach. To me, that seems quite excessive at 9. I just think that 4 hours squad training a week and no individuals would actually be really good. I don't see the benefit of having 6 hours per week. I'm a big believer of quality over quantity. And this just says to me that, well, it looks kind of like the more coaching you do, the better you're going to be. I don't believe that's true. And I'll use examples here. Like, I work with some under-8 players and they train for 90 minutes. I've said a few times that I do believe sometimes, especially on a Friday, that last 30 minutes is a waste of time. The players are mentally and physically done. We're just being on court for being on court's sake. I'd rather have players come with me for less time but get the quality in. Like, for me, 6 hours a week sounds a lot. I'd be probably conscious of how much tennis they're playing in that time, or how much time they're just being told what to do, how to do it, and when to do it by a coach. Not too sure about the 6 hours. Something really positive that I do like in this is just under squad training, we've got free play and practice matches. Yay! We don't need tennis coaches to play tennis. Way. Well done, the LTA. 2+ hours. So again, the emphasis is more coaching over free time. I would flip that on its head. I would say, okay, well, if you're going to do 8 hours a week, you should be doing 4 hours coaching, 4 hours free time. And that free time should be playing with mates. Like, go and play tennis with your friends. That's how we all learn how to play. I did a great podcast with Stuart Armstrong, Talent Equation. I'll leave a link down below where we talk about this. Like, myself and Stuart both play tennis, not to a great high level, but we learn how to play tennis without any coaching. Why? Because we both played with our friends. We learn how to play to a decent level of tennis without any coaches, because that's the game. The game is finding ways to win. The game is finding ways to outsmart your opponent. It's not being told what to do by the coach all the time. So hats off to the LTA for including some free time, but I am a little bit disappointed that it's only 2 hours a week and the emphasis is on more coaching. So that wraps us up to 8 hours a week at the moment, which for me is a lot. That's just tennis, by the way. And that's not including matches either. That's structured training and unstructured training. So 6 hours structured training a week, 2 hours unstructured. That's 8 hours a week. Keep up with me. Then we've got athletic development weekly. Athletic development for a 9-year-old. You probably see that I'm not too keen on this. Tennis specific S&C, 3 sessions a week. So it doesn't say hours here, it's sessions. It says in addition to pre-tennis warm-ups. So S&C sessions generally last from 30 to 45 minutes and they are generally physical literacy development sessions. So throwing, catching, jumping over hurdles, doing some crazy stuff. I do believe physical literacy is important, especially now in 2025 where kids are not playing as much as they used to. Like when I was younger, I'd play out, I'd climb trees, I'd throw stones, I'd throw water balloons, I'd knock on doors and run away. Talk about developing speed. You try knocking on an angry Scousman's door and running away, you will develop very quick speed. So I'm not saying physical literacy is not important. I just believe you can get a lot of those skills through other sports. I don't believe you need tennis-specific S&C at 9 and under. I would rather a kid go and play football for an hour than run around cones for an hour. Because guess what? If you run around cones, you get really good at running around cones. We never run around cones in tennis. We don't jump over hurdles in tennis. And yes, you may say, yeah, we're developing the athletic base. These kids are pre-puberty. They are not developed yet. They are even just still growing as humans. They're not even anywhere near their peak maturity. So doing things like squats and lunges at 9, why? Because you're not developing any muscle base, because they haven't even got proper muscles yet. They're still growing. They'll get more benefit from going to play rugby for an hour, or football, or basketball, or netball, or even skateboarding. I don't see this real desire for tennis-specific strength and conditioning. Now, a good friend of mine, Howard Green, Super Movers, who's actually on my academy next week at the time of recording, like, he does an amazing job, and a lot of stuff that he does will actually transfer into the game. But I see a lot of strength and conditioning coaches, again, not going to mention names, but getting kids to do deadlifts and barbell squats at the age of 9. Like, what are you doing? You're a qualified PT and you believe that's the right thing to do at that age and stage. There's a very famous strength and conditioning coach who I'm not going to name, but he said to me, I wouldn't even go anywhere near an under 10 player because there's no point, because they're children. I can't develop an athlete with a child's body. So I completely disagree with strength and conditioning. Sorry, Howard Green, my friend. I don't think they need strength and conditioning. I'm not saying they don't need physical literacy skills. If they can't get it through other sports, then absolutely, we need to provide some physical literacy development for them. But if they can play 4 to 5 hours of different sports per week, I don't think we need S&C. So that's 3 sessions a week. It does say other sports, 3 hours a week as well. So that's a positive. My concern here is 8 hours of tennis a week, training. 3 S&C sessions. So let's say 10 hours tennis specific training, including S&C. And then just 3 sessions of other sports. So it's very tennis heavy. Tennis is quite cleary. Tennis is the quite clear main focus here for these players. Doesn't sit well with me. For someone who played football to a decent level, basketball, athletics, tennis, volleyball, so many different sports that I forget half of them. Most of my physical development was through sport. It wasn't through a sport. And well, maybe not these days, but when I was younger, very athletic. I could literally pick up any sport and play it straight away because I played in multiple different sports. I was skillful in multiple different disciplines. To me, that's like tennis. So straight away, that's already put us up to 14 hours a week. So 14 hours a week of structured, a little bit of unstructured training. 14 hours at 9. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that I have a 9-year-old and they get up at, 7 a.m. We get them ready for school. They go to school at 8 a.m. They're in school till 3 p.m. Then we pick them up. We drive them to tennis. Let's say we get to tennis for 4 p.m. They train between 4 and 6. We take them home. 6:30. Feed them. 7 p.m. Hours free time, potentially. Well, now it's 8 p.m. Bedtime. Sleep. Wake up next day. Repeat. And to get those 14 hours in, you're going to have to do that every single night of the week. Monday to Friday. I remember this doesn't include competitions either. And you're also going to have to do 2 or 3 hours on a weekend as well. Why? Why are we asking 9-year-olds to do 14 hours a week? To me, that's just wow. There's no evidence that I can see. There's no evidence or research in this paper whatsoever. There's no references to studies or actual evidence in science to say this is roughly what players need. Now, years ago, we had a thing called long-term athletes or long-term player development. And the rough guide there was the amount of sport a child needs to play was the same as their age. So 8 and 8, 9 and 9, ballpark figure. And we had these stages or windows of opportunity where players should work on certain things at certain stages. So the younger age, fundamentals, which we know is a load of baloney. And then as they get older, learning how to train, training to win, and all that jazz. That got proven to be a load of rubbish, basically. Like, it didn't quite work that way. Why? Because humans are not linear. We're not machines. We can't just be programmed at different times. So there's no evidence or research to show this is what you need to do, which scares me. So it's probably based on the players the LTA currently have. They probably have a huge database of information of what players have reached national and regional rankings, how many hours a week they're doing, how many private lessons, what other sports they're doing, and this is the collection of the average. I don't think you need to play 14 hours a week, but this is my opinion. I don't think you do. I think this is really dangerous for two reasons. Reason number one, some parents will look at this document and go, "It's no way I'm doing 14 hours a week. We can't afford it, for one." Like here, just north of London, tennis coaching, £45 to £50 for a private lesson. So 2 private lessons a week is £100 a week, £400 a month. Your squad training is anything between £10 and £15 a session. You start to add all this up, it starts to get quite expensive. Now, I know these players might be at a regional performance centre and they'll get some subsidy to their tennis coaching. Okay, so let's say it's a couple of £100 a week, but you're probably looking about just under £1,000 a month, if not a little bit less, depending on where you live. Doesn't include your rackets and your string. Doesn't include your travel. Doesn't include your clothing. Doesn't include your tournament entries. Those things aren't subsidised. So, if I'm a parent looking at this, I'm going, tell you what, I could do that, right, and pay a load of money out, but I could go to a football academy and get all that paid for me. Oh, okay, yeah, it's a no-brainer. I'm going to go to football. I'm going to go to football where it's literally they're going to pay for everything, and tennis, I'm going to have to pay for everything. I've got less than 1% chance of actually being a player. Don't know the football stats. That's one way parents can look at it. So it could be a massive barrier. Parents going, yeah, I'm not all in here. The second issue that I have with this document is you will get some parents who will just throw the kitchen sink at it. We've got to do 14 hours. Have to do 14 hours. It says on the document. And even though there's a disclaimer at the top saying every player is unique and you've got to build a bespoke program around your individual, most parents look at that and go, nah, survivorship bias. That's what the best players are doing in my age group. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do four. No, what? We're not going to do 14. We're going to do 16. We're not going to do 2 indies a week. We're going to do 3. 4 groups. Now we're going to do 6. Now we're doing 20 hours a week. Because if I do more, that surely means I get better. And this whole document just stinks of survivorship bias. Oh, let's see what the best players are doing. And let's just give that out as stats and facts. Really dangerous. Really dangerous. For those 2 reasons. Could be a massive barrier, or it could put petrol on an already burning flame in terms of parents' passion. What the LTA, and this again my opinion, what the LTA should have done is just release a document saying, we don't know. Because we don't. We don't know what it takes to be a top player. We can look at the stats from, I don't know, a Jack Draper. Again, someone who's probably gone through that system. We can look at all his stats and we can pretend that if we put his training plan when he was working with different coaches in different stages, we can put his training plan onto other players. We'll get the same results. That's survivorship bias. That's just looking at the survivor. What you don't look at is all the kids who do 14 hours a week and get nowhere near a regional national level. And I guarantee it's probably 90% plus. That's the stats you want to show. Listen, like, there's so many kids fail. And I've said this on a podcast before, there's more dead bodies than survivors in tennis. Because loads of players don't make it despite doing the exact same as Jack Draper. Just using Jack as an example, by the way. They don't make it. So why not just put a document out saying, you know what, we have no clue. Just do what you can with what you have. Let's play more tennis. Don't focus so much on the coaching. And again, we're not even talking about the match play yet. Play more tennis. Coaching is important. A good coach will guide you and fast track you to solutions a lot quicker than maybe you work out on your own. But you don't need 8 hours a week coaching at 9. You really, really don't. To me, that just, again, is putting a lot of stock in coaches. And it does say in the document, make sure you get a good accredited coach. My opinion, most tennis coaches, again, this is just my opinion, most tennis coaches train in a very traditional, very linear way. I believe coaches who use a constraint-led approach and embrace things like ecological dynamics, they develop more skillful players in less time than a traditional coach. I reckon, and this is a challenge to anyone, by the way, I reckon we could take two players. You could train him 14 hours a week in your traditional way. I'll train him in an ecological way in, let's say, 7 hours. I would have a better player. I'm pretty confident. I reckon I can do it in less time. I don't need 14 hours. Why? Because a lot of my training involves playing tennis. Doesn't involve standing around in lines and being basket fed and being told how to hit a forehand. And that's a challenge. I'm happy to take that. If anyone's happy to take that challenge on, two brand new players, same age. Again, even that's variable. Like, unless you get two exact same human beings, like two twins who have this almost identical genetic makeup, that's hard to do. But I don't think you need 14 hours. And the scary bit is, matches yearly, it's 120 matches a year, which I don't think is that bad. So it probably works out, 12 matches a month, which I think is quite good. But I think that should be more important than extra squad training. I'd rather have you playing more tennis matches than more coaching. I would reduce the weekly coaching hours and just make sure you play tennis at a weekend. So 3 weekends out of the month, you're playing matches, whether that be a tournament or whatever. And it's got a win-loss ratio. Like, that really matters at under 9. Win-loss ratio 2-1, 3-1. What's it bloody matter if they win or lose at under 9? So again, things like this just adds fuel to the parents. Just because you win at under 9 has no real factor if you're going to be a pro player or not. And you look at people like a Cam Norrie who came from absolutely nowhere. You look at players who just come from nowhere and they have losing records as juniors and they become successful players. Again, because we don't know. We just perceive this to be a linear process. And to me, that document, like, they've spent loads of money on that, because I know they've used a external marketing company. They've spent a fair amount of money on that. I think it's a load of junk. I really do. And like I said before at the start, very difficult job they have. It's not an easy job. Personally, I don't think a national governing body should be in charge of player development, because they have such little influence in the day-to-day interaction that coaches like me have with players. Player pathways, I think, are a waste of time. And I've talked about this again. I develop a relationship with a player. They start to get success. Then they move on to a national coach or regional coach with the idea of they'll take him to the next level. That's the world we live in. So there you go. Hopefully you have enjoyed this pre-recorded podcast. And yes, please check out my YouTube channel for the date and time of next week's live stream. I'm open to suggestions. If you have any topics you'd like me to discuss, please leave it in the comments down below. Please like and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching this video podcast. And until next time, remember, the kids. Let them be kids. They are not full-time tennis players. Watch the video, like the channel, and I'll see you soon.